Hey everyone, so today we're going to move on to algebra. Today's lesson is going to go with 4.3, parts of expressions, and then evaluating them. We'll start small today. And then for me, this is on page 37. Okay. So there are there's many components of expressions and equations and inequalities, and we're not going to look at all of them just because there's a lot and you don't really need to know things like constant and terms and factors and like all those things in an expression. There's just two main ones that you really need to know. So first one is variable. And you just watched a video on what variables are, but they're a letter that represents an unknown. And so sometimes a variable means one number, sometimes it means two numbers, sometimes it means an infinite number of numbers. It depends on whether or not you're working with an expression or equation, and also whether or not the problem says like x equals something. So if I had like 4x, 3y, and 8b, the variable in each of these is going to be our letter. It would be x, y, and b. You can use any letter that you would like to. X is probably the most common one you'll see. And so at this point, you're no longer going to see the multiplication sign. You're going to see a dot instead, and a dot means multiply now. And then the other thing is a coefficient. And that is a number in front of a variable that is being multiplied. So again, if I had 4x, 3y, and 8b. So what this means here, 4x, it means 4 x's, or 4 times x. So see how I use a dot here? If I use an x, it would say 4xx, and that's confusing. So we use dots now for multiplication. And so the 4 is my coefficient. And so we kind of looked at this in a way when we did order of operations. So whenever we had a number that lined up with the parentheses, that meant multiply. So here it's kind of the same thing. There's no operation. So that operation, what that means is multiply. So this here would be 3 times y, and that would be 8 times b, where the number in front is the coefficient. Okay, so those are the most important parts of expressions and equations, the variable and the coefficient. And so we're going to move on now to evaluating expressions with one variable. Okay, and I know that this is going to sound tricky, but we're going to start really small and then work our way into more complicated problems. So first one, evaluate 6 plus x when x equals 3. So what this means is I'm going to plug in 3 for x, or wherever I see an x, I replace it with a 3. So to evaluate this, I get 6 plus, no longer x, because x is 3, so 6 plus 3, and I get 9 as my final answer. Okay, next one. Evaluate 15 over k when k equals 5. So same thing here, I just, as if this variable never existed, and instead now it's a 5. So I now have 15 over 5, which means 15 divided by 5, which is 3. Okay, let's do a little bit of a harder one. Evaluate 4g minus 12 when g equals 5. Okay, so again, I'm going to replace g with a 5. Now, when I do this, I don't want to write it like this because in my head I don't think 4 times 5, I think 45. So kind of like in order of operations when we saw that there was a parentheses next to a number, what that means is multiply. So I'm just going to write 4 parentheses 5. You could also write 4 times 5 if you would like to. But this way it looks a little bit more like I replaced the G. So now I can solve. So order of operations tells me I multiply first. 20 minus 12, and I get 8 as my final answer. Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's do let's do an easy one. Evaluate 6h when h equals 8. So again, I'm going to replace the h with the 8, so I have 6. And again, I don't want to just write 8 because that looks like 68. So I could either use parentheses or I could write 6 times 8. Up to you. I kind of like the parentheses a little bit more. It shows that it was replaced a little bit better than just this, but totally up to you. So I multiply and I get 48 as my final answer. Okay, let's do 3 more. Evaluate 9 over m plus 4 when m equals 3. So again, I'm going to replace. So I have 9 over 3 plus 4. 9 over 3, that's 9 divided by 3, so that's 3 plus 4, and I get 7 as my final answer. Okay, next one. Evaluate 9 minus 8 over x when x equals 4. Okay, so this one's pretty similar to the one above. So again, wherever I see an x, I replace it with a 4. So I have 9 minus 8 over 4. Order of operations tells me I solve the division first. 9 minus 2, and I get 7. Okay, let's do one last one. Evaluate 13 plus 6 over y when y equals 6. Okay, so again, I replace. So I get 13 plus 6 over 6. Order of operations tells me I do this first. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So I have 13 plus 1, and I get 14 as my final answer. So again, with all of these, wherever you see the variable, you replace it with whatever value has been assigned to that variable.